Hello everyone and welcome to The Infinite Chapter. We're back in the studio. How was your week, Jon? Any new literary discoveries, or did you have to reread a classic out of obligation?
It's been an intense week, honestly. I finally managed to sit down calmly and reread Seneca's letters to Lucilius, and it reminded me of the importance of daily self-evaluation. I feel that this exercise of examining our actions and emotions has an almost therapeutic power, a reminder that true strength is found in self-mastery. And you, what has brought you here looking so happy?
Well, something very curious happened to me. I was wandering through a secondhand bookstore and, all of a sudden, I came across a very old edition of a children's book from my childhood. I felt such a strong connection to that moment that I realized how certain stories mark and define us, almost without us realizing it. It's as if the books choose us.
Which makes me think that today it's our turn to talk about one of those works that has undoubtedly marked thousands of generations. Lazarillo de Tormes gives us a life lesson that remains as fresh and relevant as the first day. Jane, ready for it to give us a lesson?
Completely ready, Jon. Despite the centuries, Lazarillo hasn't aged a bit. He is one of those characters who show us that, in the end, human nature doesn't change that much. The work, with its anonymity and its wit, is a gem. It's a pleasure to talk about it.
I find that idea fascinating, right? A book that seems so much from the past, and then you suddenly realize it talks about things we see every day. Cunning, appearances, survival. A mirror in which we can continue to look at ourselves. And to understand Lazarillo Jane, I think the first thing is to place ourselves. Who was the author, and in what world was this work written? Well, the first great clue about the work is that we don't know who wrote it. It was published anonymously in 1554, and that anonymity, Jane, is not a whim. The work contains such a devastating critique of the church and society of the time that, had the author revealed himself, the Inquisition would almost certainly have placed him on their to-do list. 16th century Spain was a military and religious superpower, immersed in a deep social crisis. It was the time of the Counter-Reformation, of the ideal of purity of blood, which created an obsession with pure lineage and excluded converts of Jewish or Moorish origin. This generated a deep climate of distrust and misery for those who did not fit that mold. In this context, the Renaissance idealism of noble heroes and shepherds contrasted brutally with the raw reality of poverty, hunger, and begging that flooded the streets. Lazarillo's work is born right in that crack, to give a voice to the people who were really having a hard time.
Wow, it's much deeper than it seems at first glance. So the book not only criticizes the church, but the entire social structure. And the author remained anonymous precisely because of that?
Exactly. Despite theories pointing to figures like Diego Hurtado de Mendoza, anonymity is the key piece to understanding the work. The author had an incredible sharpness for portraying a society that lived on appearances and an uncommon bravery for the time. The novel is a direct dart to the heart of that hypocrisy and the corruption of the powerful, and that required great protection from the Inquisition and the established power. Hence the anonymity which, in the end, makes the work belong to everyone and no one at the same time.
So with that context in mind, let's talk about the story. For those who haven't read it, it's a kind of autobiography. Lazarillo tells us his life in a letter, right?
Exactly. It's a long epistle, a letter that Lazarillo writes to a mysterious Your Grace. In it, he narrates his life from his birth on the Tormes River to his apparent good position as a town crier in Toledo. The story is divided into 7 chapters, each with a different master who represents a step on the social ladder. It's a journey from innocence to crude maturity.
And those masters are incredible. The blind man, the cleric, the squire. Which one would you say is the most important for Lazarillo's development?
Without a doubt, the blind man. He is his first and most important master. Although he is cruel and greedy, he is his great teacher. He is the one who, through blows and humiliations, teaches him to be cunning. The famous episode of the stone bull in Salamanca, where the blind man tricks him and hits his head, is the turning point. It's Lazarillo's baptism into the world of cunning. From then on, his learning is a one-way street. The blind man opens his eyes, even if it's with a blow.
And from there he goes to the cleric, who is hypocrisy in person, and then to the squire, who is pure vanity.
Yes. With the cleric, Lazarillo discovers the clergy's greed. The man hoards food in a chest while Lazarillo starves. And with the squire, the work reaches a sublime level of irony. Lazarillo, the beggar, ends up supporting his master, who lives only on appearances and feigned honor. The traditional roles are reversed. All those masters are mirrors that reflect the miseries of his society.
I think it's brilliant how the story is presented. It's a biography, but with a purpose. Lazaro isn't telling his life just because, but because he wants to explain a case to your grace. Can you tell us a little more about that structure?
It's the key to the novel, Jane. It's a masterpiece of unreliable narration. The supposedly happy adult Lazaro is the one who filters and tells his story. And that's where the author works his magic, because the reader has to read between the lines and understand that what Lazaro tells is not objective truth, but his version of events. The case he refers to are the rumors that his wife is the lover of the archpriest who gave him his job. Lazaro doesn't defend himself directly. Instead, he traces the entire trajectory of his life to justify that. If he has gotten to where he has, it is not by a moral choice, but by circumstances. He tells us, "Look at my life. What did you expect from me? Look at what I had to live through."
In other words, Lazaro is his own defense attorney. And instead of talking about his vices, he talks about his misfortunes.
Exactly. The author uses irony to create a distance between what the narrator says and what the reader understands. The adult Lazaro justifies his lack of dignity with the argument that it is a logical consequence of everything he has suffered.
That's a very subtle way of manipulating the reader. So, we, as readers, have to be detectives to understand what is really happening.
Yes, totally. It's a kind of existential cynicism. The author forces us to see the raw reality of a character who, for survival, has shed his innocence.
And that evolution, it must be one of the saddest in literature, right? To see how a boy who just wants to eat becomes an adult who accepts dishonor in exchange for stability.
It is. Lazaro is not a hero, he is an anti-hero. His achievements are purely material and are stained by a lack of dignity. That evolution of the character, from innocence to heartless pragmatism, is the heart of the novel. Its style is direct, colloquial, full of irony and black humor. It feels modern despite being almost 500 years old.
I've always been fascinated by the small details hidden in works. Are there any curiosities of this type in Lazarillo de Tormes that people don't know about?
Yes, there are several. The first is the mystery of the author, which we already mentioned. The work was censored by the Inquisition and included in the Index of Forbidden Books, and its publication was only allowed years later, but with the most anti-clerical parts removed. In addition, the episode of the Stone Bull is not a simple event. It is a rite of initiation. That blow to Lazaro's head symbolizes his awakening to the real world, where cunning is the only currency.
What a great detail. I hadn't seen it that way as a rite of passage. And what else about the famous final case?
The epistolary structure, the letter, has a completely circular ending. The story begins with Lazaro's justification and ends with him in an acceptable social position, albeit a morally questionable one. The reader never knows who your grace is, but it is understood that he is a powerful person to whom Lazaro must give explanations. And one last detail, the work is one of the first in European literature to subtly mention the racial issue, with the mention of the little black brother, the son of his mother and an African slave. A detail that adds another layer to Lazaro's initial misfortune.
Lazarillo de Tormes is not just a book. It is the starting point of something much bigger, right? I'm referring to the Picaresque novel genre.
That's right. Lazarillo de Tormes is the foundational work of the genre. Its influence is immense. After it came other masterpieces such as Guzmán de Alfarache and La Vida del Buscón. The figure of the pícaro, the anti-hero who survives with wit and without scruples, becomes a universal archetype. Beyond literature, the term Lazarillo has passed into Hispanic popular culture as a synonym for a cunning guide. It is a work that gave a reality check to the idealism of the Renaissance. It was a mirror that reflected the miseries of a hypocritical society, and its cynical vision still resonates with us.
Which shows that even as technology advances, people continue to have the same concerns and the same flaws.
Absolutely. The value of the work is precisely that, being a timeless social portrait. The struggle for survival, the sacrifice of dignity for stability, are issues that unfortunately never go out of style.
Jon, if you had to summarize your experience of rereading Lazarillo de Tormes in one sentence, what would it be?
I would say that reading Lazarillo de Tormes is a journey into the heart of human misery, but with a bitter smile on your lips.
I love that definition. What impressed me the most is how the author manages to make you a little fond of Lazaro despite everything. You understand that his choices are not those of a villain, but of someone who has been pushed by circumstances. His happiness at the end, even at the cost of hypocrisy, is almost an achievement, a sad triumph.
It's the great lesson. The work forces us to reflect on what we are willing to sacrifice for stability. That ending, which is not a happy ending but an acceptance of mediocrity for material peace, is a stroke of genius that leaves you thinking. Lazarillo de Tormes is not just a book of literary history. It is a piece of human psychology that is as relevant today as it was in the 16th century. It is a timeless masterpiece.
What a great reflection. And with that, we close this chapter. I hope you liked this trip through the streets and miseries of 16th century Spain. If you liked it, don't forget to subscribe to our podcast, like and share this episode. Also, if there is any book you would like us to comment on in the future, leave us your suggestions in the comments. You can find us on both YouTube and Spotify as The Infinite Chapter.
Thanks for joining us on this literary journey. If you have already read Lazarillo de Tormes, tell us what you thought in the comments. And if you haven't yet, I guarantee it's a worthwhile read. Until next time.
Until the next chapter, see you soon! Hello,